almost a decade working in tech and product design, shifted it specifically with a focus on climate tech. To me, all of the customer research, the UX research, the growth hacking, the activation points is all part of design. But I think a lot of people don't perceive that as design. After my dad passed, I literally don't think I could go back to a 9 to 5. They gave me 3 months of bereavement. So I think leading up to that, I had already created my company and I was already doing that as a side hustle.
What does that mean, like conscious tech?
To put it very simply, is really like thinking intentionally about what you're creating and the impact on people specifically, right? Like on humanity and also on the planet.
Grow, rise, open minds, wisdom shines, it never blinds. They are growth mates.
So, hello everyone, welcome to Growth Mates. This is the season where we celebrate women, and we have some guests today, which is very nice. So in the company of women is the season of Growth Mates where I talk to amazing women leaders, advisors, book authors, founders. And today I have a very special guest, and I'm actually a guest in her house, Sera Tajima. Welcome to Growth Mates. It's been a long-awaited conversation for me personally. We already met several times because we are lucky to live in a beautiful city of Amsterdam. And here we are today to talk about your fantastic journey, career transitions, and, where the conversation leads us. So welcome. Super
Thank you.
it's a very interesting and experimental setup for both of us that I'm super
If you could see all the gear that we have up, it's crazy.
crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but yeah, let's just take it and let it go. And yeah, if you're watching to this show on your favorite platforms, if you like it, please share what you think, share your comments. It really helps me to keep it going and create more stuff for you. And on that note, Sarah, I'm happy to meet you. I already learned so many things about you. I don't know where to start from. So you also started your career in product design as I did. Back in the days, you worked in Zendesk, in Webflow, of course, in Y Combinator. So many amazing names there. But now you're doing something absolutely different. And I will let you to tell what you're doing these days.
My goodness, yes. So now I've shifted after almost a decade working in tech and product design. And also, I don't know if you knew this, I actually started with coding first and then going into design.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we never really spoke about it, but shifted into startup advising. And we've spoken about this, but specifically with a focus on climate tech.
Yeah.
So this has been like a really interesting, a bit of a pivot, you could say.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm having Andy Budd on my own podcast. So I was chatting with him yesterday and saying it's funny because I'm using all of these things like growth, which we both are specialized in. And I think of all of this as design, right? To me, all of the customer research, the UX research, the growth hacking, the activation points is all part of design. But I think a lot of people don't perceive that as design. So the language that we use around it is a little bit different maybe. And people think of it more as maybe in like the product management kind of space.
Wow, we will definitely dive into that transition and maybe beyond that, what are you passionate about? I think when we walked, we discussed so many things and art, your conscious lifestyle. What are the things that have a meaning in your where you said right now?
Yeah. So yeah, as it's probably clear, like one of the things when I decided to pivot my business, the craft, into was environment. So environment is really big for me. I grew up in Hawaii, which is like a really beautiful place, right? And how can you not be influenced by the environment when you grow up in like such a beautiful natural setting? So that's been a driver for me. And once I decided like, okay, I want to do something for environment and the climate, that's when I started doing the advising with climate tech. But also something that we've spoken about as well is doing angel investing. And we can definitely chat more about that.
if you didn't know, in addition to making this show, I'm also helping other companies grow meaningful products as an advisor and a founder of Growth Mates. And now I'm also launching a new course, User-Centric Product-Led Growth. My whole career, I've been balancing between business goals and user needs. And you know one truth that I found? What is good for user is also good for business. I collected all the best practices I learned for over 6 years working on product growth at Mira, interviewing more than 20 industry leaders on this podcast, and preparing proven practices that drove real impact. In this 3 week intensive, we are going to turn your real challenge into a growth roadmap, from quick wins to big bets. And I will be there for you to provide my feedback in live sessions. And for dear listeners, I want to share a discount of $100 with the promo code GrowthMates. The link will be in the episode description, and I would appreciate if you can share it with someone who might find it useful. Hope to see you on the course. We have so many things like a transition from a comfortable full-time job to doing something on your own, building your client base, your podcast as well, your course, then angel investing. So we will, move forward piece by piece. So one thing, probably people who are listening and watching this are curious about is your transition from full-time job, which seems to be a comfortable, stable place to be, to something that is so unconventional, right? So you could advise probably traditional tech companies, but you decided to focus on a very specific niche. And what was that moment when you realized that you don't belong to your full-time role anymore? And what was that calling that, let's say, was a shortcut or a way for you to jump into absolutely new area?
Yeah. So I think there are so many steps to that, right? Like it might look like overnight, all of a sudden I'm working in this different area, but really, I think, after college, I started, working and getting into a space where I realized like, oh, I think entrepreneurship might be something that interests me. And it's funny because I had never been that person growing up. Like, I think growing up also, I had so many different interests that I was a little bit envious almost of people that were like, this is what I want to do and this is what I'm good at. Because I wasn't that person. I was like, I have so many things that I enjoy and I have no idea what to do. So to be able to kind of find that clarity through experimentation, I think has been like a really important part of my path. But it started actually because I was working with Webflow. So this is like the real catalyst. Actually, my dad passed away, and I think it was
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, it was really like at that moment where Webflow was really great about this. By the way, like they gave me like 3 months of bereavement or 3 months. It was quite long, like much longer than I think a normal company would get.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think just when like a parent passes away, you're so like shook by it and like so affected even physically that I was like I literally don't think I could go back to a 9 to 5 right now. Like I just couldn't do it. My mind is somewhere else. So I think leading up to that I had already created my company and I was already doing that as a side hustle, and that really created like the perfect transition into like, okay, let's just go full time into this.
Oh, first of all, I'm like, yeah, sorry to hear about that story. At the same time, I'm like shocked how many similar things we have in common because I also had this experience when my dad passed away. I was at Mira, but what happened with me, I actually took that grief into an energy that I put into work, into harder work, and it was not good, like
Okay.
for me eventually. So I just, yeah, just passed through that grief
Yeah.
with that way, while probably you did that a bit more consciously. And the conscious is a word we will use many times today. And now you're also, yeah, you're positioning yourself as an advisor in conscious tech space. And people probably are curious to understand better what does that mean, like conscious tech. What makes the tech company conscious? How do you identify?
Yeah.
Because maybe some other folks like me would like to support this area,
Yeah.
but how to identify if this potential founder is conscious enough about the technology they are building?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think there are so many different levels when you think about consciousness. And this is particularly fascinating when you start incorporating AI, because then people also think of like, oh, well, is AI conscious and to what
Yeah.
degree, you know? For me, consciousness, to put it very simply, is really like thinking intentionally about what you're creating and the impact on people specifically, right? Like on humanity and also on the planet. And so for me, that's like the environmental piece. And there are so many examples of this in tech, but for example, it could be like sustainability in your UX design or physical products like circularity. It could be thinking about ethics. It could be avoiding dark patterns. Like there are so many ways that you can kind of go about that.
Interesting. So, and how do you actually find these like-minded people, founders, your clients who support the same values as you do? Because it started like, you know, I'm thinking about how to build that community around myself of like-minded people. And sometimes you just don't know where to find these people,
Yeah.
especially for you working in that tiny niche. How do you go about that?
Yeah, good question. So for me, it's really just about putting myself out there authentically. And, I think when I first came into the workforce, I thought I had to be someone else or like be very like sort of corporate professional and kind of hide my personality or maybe my values even. And I realized that actually you're going to find the right fit for a role when you are like, when you show up authentically 100% as yourself. And if like, whatever in that interview process, those people aren't really resonating with that, then it probably means you're going to be really unhappy if you accept that role. And so I think about it a little bit similar. Like we both have quite a big like social media presence, you could say. So I think for me, it's more about, okay, in a digital space, how am I presenting myself and talking about my values, but also maybe what I'm doing behind the scenes. And like this is always a challenge, right? Like we're wondering like, what's the strategy and how do we show up? But I think for me, it's been showing more of the things like this that I care about, conscious tech, and also talking more about my climate tech journey. Because I think last year when I launched my own podcast and newsletter, I didn't bring that in. I talked more about product design.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going through a journey of like, okay, now I'm going to incorporate more of like climate stuff, sustainability, that kind of thing into my content. And it's been going really well.
Absolutely. That resonates so much because I noticed that sometimes I was like led by the community driven passion. So, what community wants for me, I was like following their interest rather than my internal interest by sharing the content about more like business driven stuff. And then I realized it led me somewhere else, a bit far away from where is my inner
Right.
passion. And I started bringing back topics like user centricity that I love, user research. Even today, I uncovered that I haven't talked a lot about leadership that I've been in my role, and I want to bring it back. And I think that realization and that inner compass is super important, especially for people who are like building solo careers as we do. Otherwise, it can lead to a dark side
Yeah.
where you feel like you're not yourself anymore. And even it can lead to working with clients who are, mm, let's say, yeah, you just don't probably understand in that moment how you got to this point to working together, that you have so like different values. It's very important to be aligned with them.
Yeah.
And by the way, another thing we didn't touch yet, but you also started doing something very nice and authentic, is investing in angel investing into a similar space. And when I look at that from outside, it looks like so complicated. How it's that even possible? It looks like you need to have enormous amount of resources to start doing that. But when you told me the truth, like behind that, it seems like it's possible for more people than we think.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that and how to unlock that investing door.
Yeah. So also, I really like your point, by the way, that if you have like a very clear purpose, then no matter how many times you kind of get knocked over or like swayed in the waves, right? Like you know where you're going. So you have like a very clear direction. This is almost like North Star, right? When we talk about growth. And so that really helped guide me. But because I was very clear on the impact that I wanted to have, I was like, okay, how do I go about getting into this space as someone with literally zero knowledge on climate tech, right? Like, and climate tech is not just software, which is really our expertise, but it's also like hardware and deep tech and like lots of science and things that I don't have like a professional background in, right? So for me, the way to do that was actually through angel investing. And so I found a group, and the group that I invest with is called Climate Insiders. And so we invest specifically in mostly hardware, deep tech type stuff. It's like pre-seed, seed stage climate tech startups. And this is how I like got my foot in the door. And as you mentioned, like I think the common misconception is like, oh, like you must be loaded if you're doing angel investing, right? And that's just not the case. Like most people that work in tech can angel invest, but people are just not doing it. And so I hope that actually this podcast can help to dispel the myth that you need to be like a millionaire in order to start angel investing. Because when you angel invest, the whole point of angel investing is that you're not part of like a venture capital firm with millions of dollars and LPs. It's really that you're able to just put down a check for 1,000 or 2,000. I think the first one that I did was maybe like 400 US dollars. So yeah, you just start dipping your toes in the water and learning. And for me, like we can talk more about how investing in startups works and like strategy, but I really saw this more as a learning opportunity. And so for me, it was more about, okay, this is my gateway into learning how to invest properly, learning how to assess startups, how to qualify leads, how to like determine if a pitch is good or not, like what points do they need to hit, what questions do I need to ask as an investor. But yeah, I don't want to go on too long about it.
Melissa, so awesome. Like, I think you've mentioned one important thing that probably will break some myths, that you can start from 400 US dollars investment, and that's enough to start from. Even like 1,000 is more than enough to start from. And then it opens the door to the community of like-minded people, and then you can start learning from them.
Yeah.
And um, how is it? How does it look right now? So you're supporting some founders of companies who are investing in, or it gives you another channel of like connections to potential clients.
Yeah,
So how
exactly.
how does it work?
Exactly. So that was my thinking. Like investing in a company is a great way to show that you have skin in the game, right? So that you're like really highly invested in their success. And when you approach a founder as an investor in the company instead of just some random outsider, you build a very different relationship when you're working with them. So this is kind of how it started for me. Sometimes I'll take equity in startups that I advise. But a lot of, partnerships that I had last year were startups that I invested in and reached out to, to say, if you need any help, this is what I do. This is how I can help you. And that's kind of how the relationship started.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, it's proactive rather than just waiting when these clients will find me and ask me if I if I could help them.
Yeah.
For me, it's one of the to-do items on my list, actually, to figure out like more specifically what are the niches I want to focus on and go to these people more proactively, because I just couldn't do that for some reason because I've been super busy. But I think not just me, we are waiting when somebody will come to us, but it's better just to go and do that.
Yeah. I think if I could just add one point to that, like the thing about investing is that I think when it comes to climate change, something like a startup is going to have a much larger impact, especially like startups that can raise venture capital means that you have a very large total addressable market or TAM. So it means you're going to have a very large impact, right? The impact of that one startup is much greater than you as a person having sustainable practices in your life. And like I try to, I think to some extent we're all hypocrites when it comes to climate because I care a lot about climate and, I care a lot about sustainability, but I also travel and I'm not going to sacrifice seeing my family. Um, so, there are certain like things that we're not willing to give versus what we can give. And when I think about how do I, as one person, have the largest possible impact that I can have, it was really like using my money as a vehicle for startups to be successful in this space.
Yeah, that's super meaningful type of work, I think. And yeah, the niche where you can find that meaning. And I wanted to ask you, but now I think the answer will be pretty straightforward. But after discussing these two chapters, two things you are doing right now, like
Yeah.
your advisory plus investment path, Do you have any second thoughts, like coming back to the reality of the full-time corporate job, or probably not?
Every day I wake up and I'm like, God, I miss my 9 to 5. No. I really loved like working as a product designer is great. And I really, really enjoyed it. And that was the first role I had where I felt like, oh, I found my calling. So I do really appreciate, being able to work for tech companies in this capacity as a product designer. But I think in terms of the impact that I want to have, that's what drives all of my decisions right now, even if it's uncomfortable or if I don't have a clear roadmap and it just means taking the first step, then that's what I'll do. So for me, that means not going back to a 9 to 5. I think the better impact I can have is advising multiple startups and sharing like this knowledge that I received from, those years working in tech in San Francisco, because a lot of founders, especially climate tech founders, don't have that background in like what is the incentivation metric or the aha moment or, why is retention more important than acquisition or, these types of things.
Yeah, this is something like actually opened my thinking like a month ago or so, because I've been focused mostly on the tech, like traditional SaaS, B2B, B2C.
Yeah.
But then I started talking to more people in other industries, like, physical businesses, art,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And they really actually they have enormous amount of creativity and passion and capacity to do that, but they really lack business element and
Yeah.
knowledge and maybe some marketing understanding and packaging. And I was like, interesting, maybe that is the thing I can also do and I can also try. So this is another item in my to do.
Yeah. I think why not explore at all, right? Like if you have sorts of intuitive nudges, then I think that you should go with that. I think a lot of people now actually approach me to ask about like my investing journey. And I think sometimes people are looking for like a roadmap of like, give me the checklist that I can follow. But really for me, it's just been following intuition. Like I'm in a dark room and there's like just one light in front of me and I go pick up that light, So it's like there's like a long path that you can follow, but you're never going to discover it if you can't take the first steps yourself.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. And about saying, talking, sharing, we are both on social media
Yeah.
pretty much. And I've noticed that the way you present yourself is like really authentic and you're not chasing like sometimes algorithms or like what following it gives or like how many likes you get from these videos and posts you share. You just share. And how do you go about that? Like you are pretty determined to being publicly visible. However, I personally, for example, started feeling a little bit, tired of that social activity
Mhm.
when you need to do it like all the time.
Yeah.
So, especially when, for example, our algorithms just don't appreciate what you are doing and just ghost that
Yeah.
content. So, how do you find the balance or energy internally to keep moving on? Yeah.
Yeah. So I posted on LinkedIn that does anyone else feel like LinkedIn is like being in a toxic relationship?
I do actually. Yeah, something happened, and this is not just me. A lot of people are
Yeah,
talking about that.
all of our numbers are down.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not a creator, then I think a lot of people from the outside don't realize how much work goes into it and how the algorithm almost like holds you hostage a little bit. And so to your point, it's like, how do I enjoy this and, get what I want to get across while still kind of being aware and adhering to some extent to the algorithm? And I think that's always like a dance that you're in. But for me, as I mentioned, I was focusing a lot on just sharing product design content. And this year, I changed my strategy to, now with everything, like how am I sharing more about everything that I'm doing? So that's also incorporating posts on climate tech about my investments and also more on just like consciousness and maybe like things that I do or things that I value. Um, my approach with that is like sometimes it's uncomfortable to post things that feel like a little bit out of place on LinkedIn, right? Yeah. Like there's a certain style on LinkedIn, especially for product designers, and I think people expect certain things like portfolio content or interview content. And what does it mean when you step out of the norm? I think for me, if I get a creative idea, it means that someone out there needs that idea. So even if it's sharing something that's like a little bit uncomfortable for me, if there's just one person that saw that and commented like, whoa, this is really the message that I needed right now, then that was worth it for me. Because sometimes impact doesn't always need to hit like a whole market of your audience, right? It can just hit 10 people that it really resonates with. And, maybe those people become a part of your course or your coaching or what have you. So, yeah, that's kind of how I approach it.
Exactly. And honestly, I realized that yesterday and started doing that today,
Yeah.
like sharing a little bit more personal, authentic things that just come my way and
Mhm.
that I live through. And today I posted something that happened to me this week on Wednesday. I was running to Tulips fields and I missed the bus, then I missed the tram, then I missed the metro. I took another lane, then I had to call a cab to get back. So it was insane. I was running literally like uh, lost my phone. Like it just fell on the ground, and then I was running to the bus, and then the lady, very calm lady, said, "You're fine. You can take any bus you want today. It's fine."
Yeah.
And this realization came to me like you can run in that noise and through that noise and get to the point, or you can just walk, think like
Yeah.
smoothly and in patience and just, in calm, and you get to the same destination.
Yeah.
And I just shared these thoughts, and I've seen like several women, actually more women, commented on that and like said, yeah, this is a great reminder. And I think agree, like, yeah, talking about that, it doesn't mean how many people will resonate to that. It means like if it resonates with you, you just share it
Yeah.
without any expectations. And it really helped me uh in that social media, yeah, part of my life. And you're also doing something else which also makes us like a little bit sharing things in common is your training.
Yeah.
And you've done your growth design training for a while now. You're doing something new and also interesting. How this education piece appeared in your life, and then we will talk about what works, what doesn't work, because I'm personally like curious to learn and try out some things on my course that I'm also happy to share about with you. So
Yeah.
how did that education mission appear in your life?
Yeah. Okay. I really also want to add to
Yeah.
what you said because I really like it. When you're sharing the story about like everything that happened to you and that you realize you could just walk. I think when you share things like that and you really show up authentically on social media, it gives other people permission to show up authentically as well. We can all just like stop pretending to, I don't know, be super formal or, pretend that we're not like a normal person. Cause sometimes like super corporate environments can feel that way a little bit. I think that's shifting after COVID because you see like, your coworker with their cat or their child. And I think that's really nice. Like it just kind of humanizes everything a lot more.
Sure.
So I really like that. Your second question was
Education.
education. Yes. So I realized when I launched the craft as a side hustle that I really enjoy helping people, like coaching people. And actually, after my dad passed, like the craft was the thing that like really got me through it all because after my dad passed, I got COVID, like really realizing what it was because I had like severe neurological issues. And then I couldn't work for basically 1 year because I was so ill. But also at the moment that I was like going to the emergency room, my partner and I also broke up, like my partner of 3 years. So like everything for me kind of happened at one time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just actually through doing coaching that I really actually gained a lot of joy. So it was like paying attention to those small things that give you a lot of joy and a lot of positive energy. So I could go from like feeling, quite depressed for obvious reasons to having a coaching call and then feeling really uplifted by just connecting with someone else and being able to help them in their career. That for me was maybe the spark that then led to actually creating a boot camp, which was very difficult. As an entrepreneur, you sort of like, you have to accept that either you're going to fail or you're going to pivot. But for me, failure is just a redirection towards the like best thing for you. So I think the boot camp for me was like a lot of lessons because it came at a very difficult time in the market when people kind of stopped hiring. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But in terms of like content and everything, that went really well. And I really enjoyed like building a relationship with the students in like a more boutique boot camp, I guess you could say, right? Because I wasn't accepting like 1,000 applicants. And yeah, for me, then it was okay. I think I created a boot camp to your point, just because this is what people want from us as creators or entrepreneurs. This is what people want right now in the industry. They want content on interviewing or portfolios and whatnot. And when I took a step back to think, what is my actual strength and what value can I provide here? Yeah, when I thought about what my strength was, of course, it was in growth design. And also, I really enjoy like this type of designing, really like from like a data perspective and getting like customer interviews and all of that experimentation. It's like a little bit more scientific to me than just, I don't know, doing like user interface design. So I really like being able to have that element and also be able to teach it to people. My course evolves because I don't know, as maybe you noticed, it's not like pure growth design. I teach growth design as this. So you have growth design and kind of 101. And then I go into data driven design. I know people have like different perspectives of this because they get, into the terminology of like data informed versus data driven. But to me, qualitative is also data. So qualitative and quantitative, it's all data. And you can use that to drive your process without getting tunnel visioned on one metric. So yeah, still data driven, right? But it's like, yeah, just a very like aware, holistic approach with data.
Wonderful.
And it's shifted. So like as I ran each cohort, now I've done 4. I just finished the 4th one, which was really great. And you were also a guest speaker, which is nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I finished the 4th one, and it's evolved so much since the first cohort. It's crazy, but now it's shifting more to bringing in that conscious element. So I'm including a lot more content on like how do we design for a sustainable future, and that actually is not so growth focused. It's more kind of systems thinking focused. And it's been really nice to make these kind of bets, I guess you could say, where I'm like, ooh, it feels really weird to bring in like indigenous knowledge or like native Hawaiian concepts into my growth design course. But, I brought in the PICO framework and kind of through my own lens, like, how do we apply this indigenous framework to the work that we're doing here in terms of like generational thinking and impact? And it went so well that students stayed like 30 minutes after the class just to chat. Well, so
Beautiful.
yeah, I was so happy after that. Really, I just went in my kitchen and I was like, I don't think I've felt this happy in like a week. Like it was just so nice to see that people were really receptive to it. And then the cohort before that, I brought in a sustainable futures prism that I created. So it's like thinking about your impact beyond just the end user and business goals towards like environments, society, and governance.
This is beautiful, and it's like also another reminder to bring your authenticity into the mediums where you present your work. And I think my course is super new. I just launched the first cohort and I'm running it right now as we speak. That is like a huge amount of learning happening and iteration and also vulnerability. So for example, what I'm doing in my course is like user-centric product-led growth.
Okay.
And we also focus with students on creating their growth flow review plus roadmap at the end of the 3 weeks intensive. So it's super intense,
Yeah.
but also peer-to-peer feedback sessions. I will provide feedback to everyone at their work. So I find this very valuable. So like being close to the community and like really providing value, like tangible value, but also being vulnerable because after every session, I would say even during each session, I ask them to submit a quick survey to provide their feedback because for me, for the first cohort, it's super important. And immediately after each session, I read a bunch of feedback and I learn and I iterate immediately. So next session, I apply the learnings from the previous one. But it's also what I realized is like how to be as vulnerable as possible because sometimes, for example, in the corporate world, we receive feedback every 6 months when we have a performance review, let's say. But when you're doing something on your own, you receive that feedback all the time on social media, in these podcast comments, everywhere. But in the course, I had like 29 people who basically share feedback after each session. It's enormous amount of feedback. Mostly positive, but sometimes there are some improvements.
Always. There's always. I had this conversation with a friend, actually, Thorsten, who's been on my podcast. But yeah, there's always going to be someone, well, often I should say, if I think back even to my own experience, like there's at least one person who's, people are going to get out of a course what they come into it with and what they put into it with, like, sorry, what they put into it. So I think there's, yeah, often always going to be at least one person who's like, I don't know, maybe wasn't a good match for the course, or yeah, whatever it is, like they just have that viewpoint where they're not getting value from it. So
It happens, and also I think it's okay. I was discussing it actually with my therapist.
yeah, of course,
You know?
of course. Why not? Would you discuss it with?
Yeah, yeah. And we actually landed on the theme of the difference between shame and guilt, I think. And shame is something that you address to yourself personally. Like it's addressed, I'm a bad person. I created a poor course, and this is why it's a bad feedback, for example. While another feeling, which might be guilt, or I don't know how to purely translate it to English, is like not taking that to yourself personally, but addressing the situation that happened. And it's like, this is about the situation,
Yeah.
but it's about this phrase like that we were taught everywhere, like don't take the feedback too personally. And I think whenever you're going to this independent journey, building a company, building a solopreneurship or content business, we really need to train ourselves to deal with that enormous amount of external things, external noise, feedback, or messages that are coming our way, and how to handle that. So I think looking back, all this exposure to people in different ways, like advising, in your case, also investment, and like teaching. Looking at you today, I see like a very conscious person, self-conscious person, right? So probably, I don't know how for you, but for me, it was a huge learning curve towards my self-discovery and self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for you as well, probably.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I could not have been here like 3 or 4 years ago. It would not have been possible. Like I think most people think that they fear failure, but what they really fear is success. Because the amount of internal work that you need to do when you become an entrepreneur and when you become really successful and when you are seen by so many people and also criticized by many of those people is just next level. Like you need to be so in tune with yourself, and also, as you said, have that internal compass of like, okay, well, they were projecting on me in that case, and that was really about them. And just know what you stand for, because like for me, ultimately, not everyone is here to resonate with me and my message. I'll repeat that. Not everyone is here to resonate with me and my message. So I accept that. And if people disagree with something that I'm doing, then that's totally fine. They can disagree. But my content is not for them in that case. Like it's really for the people who see it and, really think like, okay, that's something that, resonates with me or aligns with my values, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I
absolutely.
approach it.
And I think one thing that I'm still struggling with, or like learning in my entrepreneurship and my solo path, is dealing with uncertainty, because I'm that person who like loves taking things under control and like organizing everything. However, there is like absolutely insane level of unpredictability in that type of work, and income unpredictability, all things are way more unpredictable. And I think, as you said, I can't imagine being myself in that mode as well 3 years ago. um and yeah, now I'm here, and I would say it's still difficult. So whenever, I don't know, dear listeners, whenever you're looking at me or Sarah, and it looks like it's easy and it's fine, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not easy.
It's hard. It's very hard. And yeah, I would say the amount of work I'm doing with myself, you're doing it as well, like as a therapist, coaches, I don't know, I'm paying so many people to, like fix. I'm reinvesting, right? Because I realized that I really, in order to keep doing that, I need to reinvest into this podcast as a type of content. I need to reinvest into business element, but also
Yeah.
into myself
Yeah.
to be capable to keep doing that.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you want to keep elevating, you need to keep pouring back into yourself. And I think that is maybe a point that is missed. And I think, you said something earlier that made me think a little bit about the differences between how I operate now with like
Mm.
a lot more awareness of who I am as a person, my energy levels, and also just like being a woman in business. And that looks very different now than I think a lot of people might think they have to be.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's like for me, I know that I need a slow morning, and that means that I will be more productive and perform at my best throughout the day. And that's just something that's, very small, but I think, online you always hear like, oh, wake up at 5 a.m. and then I go to the gym and lift weights. And it's like, yeah, I lift weights, but I won't be lifting weights at 5 a.m. Like that won't be me. And then I'll be very, like I just won't be at my best.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And listening to a rhythm is like your inner speed is also important.
Yeah,
So for me,
exactly.
yesterday it happened like this realization that I can allow myself to go to the park in the
Yeah.
middle of the day because it's
Yeah.
plus 20 in Amsterdam. It's like it's serious. Here we need to appreciate that. And I canceled the call, which wasn't super like
Yeah.
important.
You was with me. No.
Yeah,
That's where you were.
I just postponed this call, and yeah, I enjoyed that moment of sitting in the park.
Yeah.
There were mostly students there.
Yeah.
Still, we are still in the like the world where people spend more time in the office.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also agree with you. Like this shift is super important, and after a year and even a year and a half of living through that more, let's say, integrated, like work life integrated type of life, i I would say it's also impossible for me to realize a different way of
Yeah.
living. But you never say never, you never know. And for now I would say like I appreciate this integration and the balance that I'm still building, sometimes overworking, but sometimes giving myself a pause like I did yesterday. And I wouldn't like to finish that conversation for sure, but just being conscious of time. One last thing that I usually ask all guests and like women guests on this season, looking into the future,
Mhm.
what do you think the world needs more of? We talked about conscious tech, we talked about education, we talked about investing. We talked about um, making your day um, structured in a way where you can be productive, but you can also be slow. So maybe there is one thing we didn't mention that you think the world needs more of.
Ooh. So I think two things come to mind. When as you were talking, then I immediately thought of like Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan, I think, saying the world needs more masculine energy, which is super funny. And I think I have more masculine energy than Mark Zuckerberg. So I don't think that's what the world needs. If anything, I think the world needs more like feminine energy and more female leaders. And that is not to say that there's like one way of operating or that's there's no like spectrum of gender, but it's more just that there are different ways of being. And right now, I think we mainly see one way of being. So I would love to see more female leaders kind of stepping up and, shaping their career in a way that works for them. I think the second thing that comes to mind is just um, empowering yourself. I think so many people out there are kind of waiting for permission from someone else to say, hey, you can do that, when really it comes from you. Like you need to be the one who's giving yourself permission to take an action and be your own biggest cheerleader. And whether it succeeds or fails, like you know that you have your own back and you know that like you're getting to know yourself through that process. So yeah, I would say it's more of just yeah, being the one for yourself, right? Like stop looking outside of yourself for someone else to solve your problem or give you the task or give you the role that, I think it's really just kind of doing it yourself.
This is beautiful. And maybe to add to that, the feminine energy, I think it's not about like just feminism and like only that
Yeah.
connotation.
Mhm.
I've been like super conscious about that. I'm also into analytical psychoanalysis. uh, analytical psychology, as we say. And there is a feminine part and masculine part in every human being.
So we have both.
We have both.
Yeah.
And the feminine element is about like also creative energy. And this is something that I think the world needs more of. Like allowing yourself to be creative, finding that source somehow, following that, keeping that, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And this is my actually discovery. This is actually something I'm gonna do. And this is actually the last episode of this season for that reason, because I'm gonna take a little pause and I will go into creative discovery to uncover new themes, new topics for new seasons of this podcast, to get back with a new energy, with a new theme, and it should be something around creative search.
Yeah.
And yeah, on that note, I think this is a great happy ending of this season. And it's a sad, but at the same, I'm super happy that they made that happen. And I appreciate your time, Sarah. I appreciate we did that in person, because I also think this is something the world needs more of. I really started missing that human aspect in every like day, a LinkedIn type of life, when we scroll and just see people only there.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm really happy that we managed to organize that setup and made it in person, and hope I don't know when, but soon I will get back to that show, to the listeners, with something new and something authentic. And yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. And in the meantime, I think Sarah can share how to stay in touch with you, and I can share how to follow what I'm doing here.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. To like putting on a podcast, everyone, is so much work. So I think it's such a pleasure to be on your podcast and also to have all of the great podcast episodes that you've recorded. If you would like to connect with me, I am definitely active on LinkedIn. I'm starting to post more on YouTube. And I also have my newsletter, Conscious Tech. And I think we will link this in the show notes. But also my podcast is just my name. Why make it complicated? So it's just Sera Tajima Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube.
Beautiful. We will attach all the links for sure. And it's best to stay in touch with me on LinkedIn and also on my Growth Mates newsletter, where I will be also sharing updates about my course. And we will attach all the links and see you back. Keep growing.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Спасибо.
Oh, I hope we catch that.